Hi guys, Bran here, and I'm happy to report that Jason is a good B to high B tier character with a lot of skill expression and counterplay. He's very excellent because—
Yeah, I don't think I'm playing them.
Why? They're literally the most anticipated chapter in Dead by Daylight history.
Yeah, and you said they were B tier, right?
Well, yeah, but what's wrong with B tier?
Oh, what's wrong with B tier? Oh, I'll show you.
What? Where's he going? All right, so you've probably heard of this one. Yeah, this one sucks. I don't like that one. This one's been a problem for a long time. Oh, okay. I'm starting to see, I think, what you're talking about. This one's been unfair for basically forever. I don't know why they don't change this.
1 day later.
You know, I think he's got a good point. Hello everyone, finally, the most anticipated, long-awaited dream chapter of all time, Jason, has finally come to Dead by Daylight. How did the big man measure up? Is he as fun as we were hoping he would be? Is he as strong as we would hope that he would be? Or was he a little disappointing from his PTB iteration to live? Let's go ahead and talk about it. First off, despite the fact that he was near perfect in his PTB iteration, they chose to do some add-on nerfs and some base kit nerfs, and one of these is fairly okay and the other one is not so great. The add-on changes, I think, were mostly fine. There were just some small numbers changes, and in the case of Deputy's Badge, I think it actually created instead one of my favorite add-ons to use on the character. It used to be an aura-focused perk to kind of patrol the gens, and now it has more of a Ghostface driver's license effect where you pass by the gens, they blow up for a tiny bit of damage. It also gives you info. It also applies a great skill check to them if they stick on the gen. It's a very excellent add-on. You should definitely try it if you haven't. However, the base kit changes are kind of a doozy. The PTB to live nerf that feels the most abysmal is the fact that they extremely extended his anti-camp teleport speed, upping it from 2 times as slow to 3 times as slow. This means that you are stuck in animation for years if you just so happen to teleport anywhere near that 60-meter range of a hook. And you may be thinking that's good to stop camping, but with a power like Omnipresent Evil, you're using it to get around the map to macro pressure gens, or you're using it in chase to cut people off. The odds that this will happen within that 60-meter distance of a hook are fairly high, even when you're not intending to camp the hook. So to be mid-chase with somebody and then suddenly be, ooh, I'm coming. Ooh, I'm coming. It's completely ridiculous. It throws entire chases. It throws your entire groove off. It is abysmally terrible. I don't know why they made this change. It makes the character feel awful. It makes him feel atrocious. It makes him feel sluggish. And I really hope they revert this because it is probably the worst anti-camp punishment in the game, besides characters that obviously just have their power taken away entirely. They also incorporated a movement speed penalty for canceling the projectile charge animation. I get that they did this to try and cut down on zoning, but the character is already punished for zoning by the fact that they're a 4.4 or 110 speed character, meaning they are slower than the average killer. That already balances that. That, and also the fact that the projectile is extremely accurate, meaning that if a survivor even moves slightly to the left or slightly to the right, you may miss even if you aim generally in the right direction, just because the projectile is that accurate. So survivors really shouldn't be doing these super wide dodges to avoid you that would allow you to catch up if you were zoning. Overall, just similar to the last change, it just kind of left him feeling extremely clunky when he was mostly fine on the PTB. I'm really not a fan of these changes. There's one good change. It's not all bad for the base kit changes. They did change it to where freeing somebody that's pinned by one of the spikes no longer counts as a healing action. So stuff like We're Gonna Live Forever does not activate and give people endurance off of that, so that's good. So it wasn't all bad. But overall, now that we've played a little bit of Jason on the live servers for a bit, how is he overall? Is he strong? Is he weak? Is he fun? Is he boring? Well, I'm happy to report that he's a pretty fun killer overall, and is a natural evolution of the archetype they started with Xenomorph and then evolved upon with Springtrap. Jason is a character with a fun, snappy ranged attack, map mobility, a minor stealth ability, and a lot of base kit information. Dare I say, he's probably the strongest character out of that current archetype out of Xenomorph and Springtrap. Now, of course, this is all, day one, so we only had so much time with the character across multiple streams and experts that are trying to get their hands on this character, so it kind of remains to be seen, but I personally think that they are the best of that archetype so far. Another good caveat is that Jason is actually extremely fun. Sending survivors flying with the spike or throwing it through narrow gaps feels insanely hype and obviously is very good for farming clips. This is definitely going to be a clip farming character. The character is also fairly difficult. They're actually moderately hard to pick up because not only do you have to understand and get good at the spike throws, but also you have to know how to get the most out of the omnipresent evil power, the teleport ability, not only to pressure the map, but to how to utilize it in chase as well. There's a lot that goes into this character, and as you begin to master them, it feels extremely fun to see that understanding transfer into big plays. Now, based on what I just said, you may think I would be highly recommending Jason and asking you to hop on for games right now. Go buy that character and go have a good time. Well, that analysis would leave out something pretty unfortunate about playing modern Dead by Daylight. B tier characters kind of suck right now. In a perfect world where maps don't have 5 billion pallets, perks don't play the game for the survivors, hook stays don't last 70 seconds, all that stuff, Jason would, dare I say, be almost literally a perfect killer design. However, it's not the world we live in. We unfortunately live in a world where we have hyper-focused stakeout, still not changed at all since its release and combination that it's had, sprint bursts and vigil, constantly giving head starts to every single chase that you have, not only for you, but also for your teammates. Even if you're wasteful with pallets, don't worry, there's always more. There's just so much stacked against the killer role these days that even somehow they've made it to where B-tier killers feel weak a lot of the time. This is an absolute shame because, balance-wise in any PvP game, the A and B tier strength is kind of like the goal. That's where you want most of the stuff in the game to be, whether that be characters, perks, etc. You want most of the things in a versus game to be around that A and B tier area. However, because of just how lopsided the balance and health of the game has gotten, somehow Jason feels underwhelming and frustrating to play a lot of the time. I cannot emphasize this enough. He is a near perfect design. He's extremely fun, extremely hype, and I can't wait to play him more. I'm just realizing that I'm not as excited to play Dead by Daylight because it has morphed into this weird, almost anti-killer kind of philosophy when it comes to the game health and game balance itself. If Jason was released in an era that didn't really pressure you to play a top 5, top 10 character just to get by and win consistently, he would be amazing and it would be a 10 out of 10 no notes release. However, he's just kind of like a slightly above average character, which means he can't really compete with a lot of the unfair crap that's in the game right now. He kind of emphasizes this issue we've had for a long time, that if you're playing a character outside those top 10 characters in the game, you're sweating bullets to perform consistently at all. And unfortunately, he just cannot really compete or hold a candle to those characters that are in the top 10. Additionally disappointing are his perks, which really didn't receive much in the way of changes despite the community heavily critiquing them. If you recall, the main reason Jason's perks were maligned wasn't because of their effects, but more so the prerequisites to activate them were very demanding, despite the effects being kind of just okay. These perks would ideally be fine with easier activation states, but they're so restrictive that often you're barely seeing value out of them throughout the match at all. This is a shame because the perk Rampage actually found to be a pretty fun perk when it would actually go off. This being whenever you kick a pallet or break up a wall, you gain a token. The next time you're stunned or blinded, you gain a 1% haste for each token that you had at the time. Once again, this is a pretty sound killer perk design. It's pretty nice, but the fact that it only goes off on stuns and blinds already limits the design, but it's kind of double limited in the fact that the haste number is extremely low that you get per token. So it's kind of like double balanced, which means you're not really seeing a lot of value. However, the biggest offender of this is Hex Scared to Death, which is whenever you break a pallet while chasing a survivor, all survivors within 13 meters scream and are hindered for 13% for 3 seconds. This sounds great and awesome until you realize that you have to hook 3 different survivors to get this hex totem to even spawn. This perk, if you were able, because it's 3 different hooks, 3 unique hooks. It's not just you got to hook somebody 3 times. You have to have 3 unique hooks. This perk, you put enough hooks into the game that if they were on the same person, it would literally sacrifice somebody out of the match. And then it finally starts going off for this very okay, well, that's kind of a good effect, but it doesn't go off until you've put out enough pressure in the game that would have theoretically sacrificed a player if it could be all on the same person. And in addition, it's a hex. So when you finally get it active, you finally get it going, it could just be cleansed immediately, depending on where it spawns. What were we thinking? This perk was really good and really, really strong. And then we decided to put not 1, but 2 restrictions on it. If it was a hex by itself, it would have been balanced because that's really strong. But if you pop the hex, it goes away. If it was only restricted by you got to hook 3 people and then it activates, it's happening more mid to late game, so you're not really seeing any value in the early game. That's balanced. But for some reason, we put both of these on, which means you're almost never going to see value, and when you finally start to get value, it's just going to get cleansed. I genuinely don't know what we were thinking with this design. Silent Shadow, which is the 3rd teachable perk, is probably the perk that really didn't need changing. It was fine the way it was in the PTB, but it got updated to be a little bit better. Now Silent Shadow gives 13 seconds of undetectable anytime you hook a survivor, and gives you permanent undetectable after all gens are done. It used to be kind of like a lethal pursuer for undetectable, and then would give you undetectable at the beginning of the game and then at the end. I think this was done to try and give it an identity aside from Secret Project, because a lot of people run Secret Project with Corrupt Intervention to get that sort of lethal undetectable effect already. So maybe they changed it to get out of that perk sway, but now it's just kind of like it does half a Furtive Chase's job and kind of steals its thunder. So if that was the reasoning that you did that, you kind of forgot a perk that now it is also stepping on the toes of. So I'm not really sure why they made this change, but if you're going to use any of Jason's teachables, regardless, it's probably this one. Overall, this update has seemed pretty middling so far, but we did have some good changes that I didn't want to admit from this video. First off, per usual, Behavior has continued to update the accessibility options by adding more aura colorization changes, including hexes, boons, block gens, exit gates, the hatch, you name it. This is an awesome feature, and I'm glad they're continuing to support it, because a lot of the time when we get good changes that need work for a long time and need continued maintenance, Behavior has been known to drop the ball a bit and kind of forget that they've started this whole trend. But with the aura customization, they've been on top of it. They haven't forgotten it so far, and that's really awesome. Secondly, and this is like the biggest one, it appears that they finally have heard us and tried to adjust the Doctor's extreme shocks and flashes that were happening way more intensely than they used to be, causing a lot of folks with photosensitivity issues to have a lot of problems facing the Doctor. This is something that we've requested for a long time once people first started realizing that the power was broken to be far more severe in its visual effects than it was supposed to be. So I'm glad that they took it seriously. It took them a while, which was kind of disappointing, but I'm glad they finally came around to adjusting this. That way, people who are a little bit more photosensitive and have issues facing Doctor can finally play the game and play Survivor without having to potentially run to this character and have to DC or quit the game for the day, or hopefully nothing worse happening as a result of that. Overall, if I had to give this chapter release a rating, 10 being amazing and perfect, no notes, and 0 being abysmal, dog water, I'd give it about a 7. Jason is really fun and skillful, making him a good addition to Dead by Daylight, but ultimately the lopsided balance of the game makes him feel significantly weaker than he actually is. He's a great character, a great release, but came out at a very bad time. It's really why I rant so much about trying to get these egregious issues addressed, because over time, it's going to start to tarnish your new character releases since the game is slowly becoming more and more stacked against them overall. The bubble is eventually going to pop when people start to realize that it's not really worthwhile to buy a new character that's not a potential top 5 contender. They're better off sticking to the top tiers that they already have since the game is so unbalanced at the moment. I would hate for this to be again influencing people's choice to get the new content simply because they've been warded away by the bad balance that hasn't been addressed, especially when it comes to cool IPs like Jason. The perks are also really nothing to write home about, with the activation states being too specific or the restrictions being too intense for ultimately what ends up being just kind of like alright effects. This is omitting the special content that we could have potentially got with the license too, like a camp map, movie skins, Tommy Jarvis, or some other IP survivor, making it just kind of overall, it's just okay. It's just an all right release. It should have been like the biggest chapter we've had in a very long time, but besides just the IP and the purchasing power of nah, this is becoming my thing. Jingle, jingle. Besides a little jingle, jingle in your face, a lot of the underlying issues in the game are still there, and they're starting to affect the enjoyment of new releases. So overall, it's just kind of an okay chapter release. Isn't any good? Sorta. So yeah. But what did you think of the Jason chapter release? Did you like it or did you find it underwhelming? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for liking and subscribing ahead of time, friends, and I'll see you in the next one. But if I don't see you there, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.